just one type of Negro, as they like to call them. But they decided there was the classical Negro. And so they worked out the cranial measurements for the classical Negro. And they said they were 36% Negroes. But there was a large body, almost 35% brown Mediterranean. Who are these brown Mediterraneans? Those people who do not fit very nicely into true Negroes, and yet are not Caucasoids, because they allow 11% Cro-Magnon, which is Caucasoid, and the rest they didn't know about. And then Falkenberger did that, William McIver did that. Diop showed if I were to take those measurements and take them into the graveyards of Africa, everybody is a brown Mediterranean. And Chatterjee and Kumar, in a study in 1965, showed that crania found in Nubia, pre-dynastic Egypt, and crania studied in the Old Kingdom in Egypt, and crania studied in the 12th and 13th dynasty had the same features. In other words, if those people are brown Mediterraneans, then the Nubians are brown Mediterraneans. And the many Africans would be simply reclassified as brown Mediterraneans. Why was it so important? Nobody in Europe ever doubted that the Egyptians were Africans until the 19th century, the early 19th century. The Greeks clearly knew them as Africans. They saw them. They were not speculating. They walked among them. They fought with them. They conquered them. They lived with them. They studied under them. And they said they were black-skinned and woolly-haired. But after the slave trade, yes, perhaps they're dark, but the sun darkened the Caucasoid or the Asiatic, etc. True, there were mixtures, obviously. Civilizations draw all sorts of things into them, and the Egyptians did not remain homogeneous. And there's the odd Egyptian here and there whom we cannot classify with absolute certainty as an Africoid. There is some intermarriage in certain stages, but there is absolutely no question in the light of a vast body of evidence that in the Pyramid Age, which was to establish the foundation of the political and religious structures and the techno-complex, that we are dealing with a dominant Africoid figure. And this is also in the Middle Kingdom, and it is also in the highest point of Egypt, the 18th and 19th dynasties. The brilliant essay by Le Grand Clerc II shows us very clearly that that is so. And it is so in the Sudanese dynasties in the evening of Egypt. But what we did not know for certain, and which we have found now, is the missing link, Tarseti. In 1962, an American team under Keith Seal discovered a pharaonic dynasty south of Egypt, which had all the major markings of the pharaonic dynasties. There they found the palace facades and the palace erects. There they found the falcon god Horus, the son of God. Among the Egyptians, the Christ, the first Christ figure. And there they found the crown of the south, unmistakable shape of the crown of the south, and the heads of a dozen black pharaohs, even before Aha or Narmer-Menes or whoever, Scorpion or whoever was the first in Egypt. And there they found the beginnings of the hieroglyphs. In other words, there was now no question that the Nubian was not merely in the evening, he was in the dawn. And it took them 16 years before they announced this. They said it took them 16 years to put the pieces together. But there were some of those pieces, like a stone incense burner from Nubia, that didn't need putting together. It wasn't even broken. But the man in charge of that expedition, Keith Seal, sat on it until he died. And after he died, thank God for his passing at that stage, because were it not for that, we would not have even heard of it. There emerged from the back rooms of the museums things which had been pushed aside, and the whole new picture emerged. And then came people, this could not be true. Lost Pharaohs of Nubia, Bruce Williams, it could not possibly be true. And there were attacks on Bruce Williams, and he replied brilliantly. If you read the papers, not only the Lost Pharaohs of Nubia, but the attack that was made and the brilliant defense point by point, you will know why this is so important. At UNESCO, Gamal Abdul Mokhtar, head of the project, when I asked him, I said, "Sir, I need Diop's paper, Origin of the Egyptians, to publish in the Journal of African Civilization." He said, "I will give you permission, Van Sertima, but you have to publish a disclaimer saying that we didn't all agree to it." This is the Egyptian, you know. Doesn't want to be called black. No, sir. Because the black figure had suffered a tremendous loss of status in the world. We had been turned slaves. So that when Count Volney, even in that late stage, walked among them, and they had already become mixed with many peoples, he said, "It is clear to me that this is a Negro race, and that we owe so much of our arts and sciences to these people we have made our slaves, the objects of our contempt." He was troubled by that guilt. And there were so many who went there with fixed ideas, like the man who wrote, Budge, who wrote the Egyptian dictionary, at first thinking they were Caucasoids or Afro-Asiatic, and when he started to write his dictionary, he began to realize all the roots of these things lie in Africa. And Gerald Massey saw that. And you look at the language, Kenti means south. And do you know what it also means? It means first. Those people south of them were first. And they created one of the names for Africa. Africa came through many names. Sometimes they were called Ethiopians and Libyans and all sorts of things. But there is a name that is in Egyptian, Afro-Ika. It was not for the continent, but it was for the people south of them. Afro-Ika meaning beginnings. And they call their people Kemiu, the dark people, the black people, Kemet, the black land. And they said the reason why it was calling it the black land is because the earth is black. I don't know what they're talking about. Everything had to be turned upside down to make it correct. The black does not fit here. I know that from so many other scientific studies here in America. When they went into the lab, they took the cotton, Gossypium hirsutum. There are two tetraploid cottons, the major cultivated cottons of America, Gossypium hirsutum and Gossypium barbadens. And when they checked it out in the lab, they found to their astonishment of 26 chromosomes, 13 belonged to an African cultivated diploid, Gossypium herbaceum, and the other 13 is a wild American ancestral cotton. And a marriage or fusion had occurred between a wild American ancestor and a cultivated African diploid 2,000 years before Jesus in America. Now, how could that be? So they said, perhaps it floated from Africa by itself. So that was tested scientifically. You have to test every theory scientifically. So they built a lab. A tank in the lab, Professor Stevens, and he tested that theory. He put the cotton, Gossypium hirsutum, and he simulated the salination and temperature of the Atlantic. After 2 weeks, the cotton sank. It would have taken 5 months unaided by man to come across. After 2 weeks, it sank. Didn't give it up. It would have taken 5 months unaided by man to come across. After 2 weeks, it sank. Didn't give it up. He said, perhaps it may sink, but it will remain submerged, clinging to driftwood, and come to America.